SD cards and best practices with trail cameras is something that we've talked periodically about throughout the last 5 years. And we've actually written some blog articles or a blog article about the technical info and best practices of SD cards and trail cameras that actually ranks number one on Google. So if you were to actually search trail camera and SD cards, that article is going to pop up first. And we've also mentioned it on several of our podcasts on Trail Cam Radio, and then probably a couple YouTube videos as well. But we make it a point to talk about SD cards because they can cause a lot of frustration for trail camera users. And a lot of times when people are experiencing those frustrations, or they think they're having some type of technical performance issue with the trail camera, and their minds are not relating that necessarily to SD cards, but a lot of times the SD card is actually the root of the problem. So today we want to touch on the 5 most common mistakes we see folks make with SD cards when running trail cameras. So, most common mistake number 1, and this is unanimous without a doubt, this is what we get the most calls and emails on, is when folks are using an SD card in multiple devices and the problems that actually causes in trail cameras. So basically what that means is you're taking an SD card out of a trail camera, you're putting it into a point and shoot camera, you use it in your point and shoot camera, then you take it out and put it into a video camera, you use it in the video camera, and then you stick it into a card reader, and then you put that same card back into your trail camera. That is probably the worst practice a trail cam user can make when they're using SD cards in the field. So when a trail camera is actually powered on with an SD card inserted, the device, it does a few things. One, it loads the firmware of the camera through a controller, and as that's happening, the device is actually reading the data or lack of data or the file structure format of that card that allows that trail camera to work properly. So when you have these SD cards on other devices and they have media files on them that possibly could be from a different codec, the file structure might be different, you're causing that camera to experience a lot of operational errors or possible operational errors. And again, when we talk about these things, it's not necessarily an absolute. You could take this card and run it in 5 or 6 different devices and do that for 6 months and be okay. But then at some point in time, you're going to start experiencing errors. And the first notion is to think, oh, the camera's, something's going on with my camera. But in reality, it's the practice of changing these from device to device to device that is actually causing a lot of those problems. So the best practice with SD cards is buying 2 cards and marrying them to a specific device. So if that's a trail camera, you can label your camera your camera's A, B, C, and D, and you have card A1, card A2. And then those cards never leave that device other than putting them into your computer to format it or view files. Number 2, not formatting your cards on a PC. Most newer trail cameras today have the ability for an in-device format, or what we call in-device format. And all that simply means is you insert your SD card into your camera, and then somewhere in that user menu you can access a format option, and you're actually going in and formatting that card in your actual trail camera. But what most manufacturers aren't telling you is that's a quick default format where you're not actually going in and adjusting partitions or walls on that card, or actually even changing the file allocation tables, the format of that card. So we recommend formatting your SD cards at least once a year, taking all your cards and actually formatting them on a PC where you're going in and changing the format, whatever, if it's format default to FAT32, change that to exFAT and then go back to FAT32 to make sure there's no partitions on that card. And then also notice the capacity. If you're running a 16 gigabyte card and you go on your PC and to go format that and the capacity is only saying 14 gigs, well, somewhere you're losing 2 gigs of capacity. So is there some type of corruption on that card? Are there cookies? That's something that, when you format these in a trail camera, they're not necessarily telling you what the capacity is. Yes, they may give you a number count, but they're not actually going to take and evaluate the full capacity that's available on the card. So it is best practice to do that once a year. Consider it like an oil change. You change your oil every 3,000 miles. Format your cards in a PC or computer at least once a year. We actually do it twice a year, but once a year will definitely suffice. Number 3, buying large capacity cards with ultra fast writing speeds. Now, this is something that we've talked about on Trail Cam Radio. And, the nature of us as men is seeing something larger, bigger, faster, and automatically thinking that it's a better product. And in most cases, in a lot of cases, there's some truth to that. But when you're looking at SD cards in actual trail cameras and how they operate and what the trail camera is actually doing, buying these large capacity cards with ultra fast writing speeds, you're not really getting any performance value when you evaluate, the cost of a 16 gig class 4 card versus a 64 gig class 10 V1 card. Those large capacity cards with ultra fast writing speeds are engineered, built for high-end photography and videography equipment that are writing super large files. In general, trail cameras write very small files compared to professional media devices like those DSLRs, mirrorless cameras, and videography cameras. And then some people might say, well, because it has a faster writing speed, the camera's going to be able to operate more efficient. Yes, but no. The files are only going to be written as fast as the host can actually write. Regardless of what the speed of this card actually is, the device is only going to write as fast as it's capable. And again, majority of the time, because those high-end cards are designed for higher-end and larger files, there's no need to spend the extra money on those large, high-capacity, ultra-fast cards when you're using them. So save yourself some money. Buy the recommended brand and speed card that the trail camera manufacturer is recommending in that user manual. Number 4, using micro SD cards when your trail camera is designed for standard size SD cards. We haven't talked about this a whole lot, but it's something that is becoming a little more common because of newer media devices in other industries like GoPros or little POV style cameras, where they're designed to use micro SD cards to save design space or board space, to allow the manufacturer, the engineering company, to make that product smaller. It's still pretty normal and widely common for trail cameras to take standard size SD cards. Now, there's nothing wrong with micro SD cards. They work just like standard SD cards. They do the exact same job, but when you're using them in a device, and you could take this outside of trail cameras, but when you're using them in a device that is designed to use standard size SD cards, you actually have to put that micro SD card into an adapter. And what you're actually doing there is doubling the failure points or possible failure points of that SD card. So, I think that we're all pretty common with these cards, and maybe you don't know this, but you've seen the contacts on the back of the card. The contacts on the back of that card, actually, when you stick that into the camera, it goes into a card socket that has the same amount of contacts. And the contacts on the card have to make proper contact with the card socket to allow that camera to actually physically write data and put files on this card. So when you're using a micro and an adapter, you're actually doubling the contact points. And when you have these things out in the weather, in the field, they get dusty. They're acceptable for moisture ingress, the freeze, the thaws. The more contact points that you have, the higher the odds of having some type of contact failure, which typically results into no SD card errors, card locked errors, or invalid media files actually written to this card. So again, there's nothing wrong with micro SD cards. If the device is designed to use them, they're great, they're awesome, they work the same way standard cards do. But if your device trail camera or any other device takes standard size SD cards, you're going to want to use a standard size SD card. Number 5, and the last thing that we want to mention, is not replacing SD cards. And it seems a little bit funny, but a lot of people buy these and they run them and run them and run them for years and years and years. And it gets to a point where they start to experience failures. And because they don't have these cards labeled, they don't know which card is bad, which card is good, which again is one of the reasons why we say to label those cards and marry them to cameras. But all SD cards have some type of shelf life or life expectancy. Now that's going to differ between manufacturers, and you can, whatever kind of cards that you like to buy, you can check those life expectancies or warranty policies that they have on all these cards, but they're not designed to last forever. When you, as hunters, most of the time, we're not very particular about how we store these things, so we're sticking them in our pocket. We run them through the washer. They're all over the floorboards of our truck. So they're not designed to last forever. And typically, when you start to see significant wear on those contacts, so you can actually, after several years of use, you can actually see grooves or wear marks on the back of those contacts. And that's just a sign saying, the card's been used, it's been used hard, it's been put away wet, and you might want to think about possibly having some replacements in your inventory ready for when that card fails. So again, follow the recommendation of the life expectancy of the manufacturer. They're not designed to last forever, and when you start to have any kind of problems, pitch them and replace those cards. Guys, we hope this video makes sense to you. Everything that we're doing here is to help educate folks, whether they're buying our cameras or they're buying another brand's cameras. We want to be able to help and make everyone a more educated consumer and a better trail camera user. If you guys find some value in that, hit that subscribe button for us and check out the podcast, Trail Cam Radio.